good evening, Professor. I just wonder if I could ask you a question about Bettina Arndt and really the phenomenon at those two universities. I, of course, remember when Bettina was starting out many years ago, and it was the right that was very hostile to her then because she wanted to speak explicitly about sexual matters. So it seemed very ironic to me that she's now. But what interests me is she wasn't wanting to argue that it's okay for men to mistreat women. That wasn't the line she was taking. All she wanted to do, as I understand it, and I've both read this and seen it a couple of times, was to go onto a university campus and say, look, I have a different view about what the numbers mean, and in fact, you're a lot safer as a young woman on a university campus than the alternative interpretation of the figures is saying. What intrigued me was, why are young women at university so hostile to having another woman, not a bloke, come onto the campus and argue that in fact they're much safer than has been said to them before? That's what intrigued me about it. As a female academic who works in that environment, do you have any reflections on that aspect of the Arndt case, which struck me as quite bizarre? Thank you.
So, thank you for that question. The title of her talk did not indicate that that was the kind of argument that she was going to give. So the title of her talk, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, you know, the fake rape crisis or the made up. The headline was, the data's wrong. The Australian Human Rights Commission ran a significant national survey collecting data on incidences of sexual assault and sexual harassment on campus, and the headlines, at least, of her talk, and it's the headlines to which that the protesters were responding to. The headlines were, she's going to say that the data's wrong and that rape isn't happening at the rape and sexual assault and sexual harassment are not happening at the level that the report said. So there's a number of aspects to that. One, I guess she was suggesting and implying that the work that the Human Rights Commission had done was flawed, and she's perfectly entitled to do that. But of course, there are many people who would disagree that it was helpful to question the findings of a significant national survey that used, from what I can tell, and I'm not a specialist in it, but from what I can tell, appropriate methods to source its data and did not seek to overstate the findings. So there was that kind of questioning of the data. And then related to that is the whole element of talking about sexual assault and sexual harassment on campus, which is that women and sexual assault victims who are not exclusively women, but for the purposes of this argument, let's talk about the women because they're the majority. Women feel as though they're not listened to. And one of the primary problems in the Me Too movement and that's been raised by the Me Too movement, and one of the primary problems in all of this, and it was a very strong theme in the Human Rights Commission report, is women don't get listened to, victims don't get listened to, they get told to be quiet, they get put through bureaucratic procedures that don't support them. And so when someone comes on campus and their message is, I'm questioning the data, again, they don't feel listened to. And anyone who's been in a workplace where they're trying to say something and they're not getting listened to, and anyone who's been in a workplace where they feel an injustice is being done to them and they're still not being listened to, can sympathise with protesters who were objecting to her not listening to them. So I think that that has a lot to do with it, the fact that they felt that she's not just not listening but refusing to listen by using the title and the slogan that she chose to use. And then, in fact, it was Bettina Arndt's people, by my understanding, who called the police to intervene. So they were exercising their free speech by protesting against her speech. She ended up giving her speech, but they felt, that's my reading of, I hope that answers your question, but that's my reading of it.
You just touched on a point there. How can you categorise as expressing freedom of speech an attempt to stop somebody else from speaking? I mean, it's one thing to say it's fine for people to go along and protest outside of the venue and express their view, but when that protest is designed to and/or has the effect of closing down, that's a very different manifestation of freedom of speech. And the second thing I want to ask you is, surely a university is the very place where it should be treated as legitimate that different people with different interpretations of data discuss that. that really troubles me. What's going on when university students reject the idea that you should sit down and listen to somebody who has a different interpretation of the same data? That's what universities are for, isn't it?
Yes, so I would reject your categorisation that the protesters were rejecting the idea that the university is a legitimate place to have disagreements about data. So that's not how I would characterise what they were doing at all. Now, in relation to your first question, attempting to stop somebody, how is that free speech? One of the things that it's absolutely crucial to take into account, and I've tried to kind of indirectly give a feel of this during the talk tonight, is that free speech is not free when everybody can say absolutely anything they want at any time and any place. But free speech, facilitating and enabling free speech, also requires us to understand that in some contexts, in fact in every context, some speakers have more power than others. And so I'm sympathetic to students who feel disempowered using their free speech to, for example, protest, to yell slogans. They didn't prevent her from speaking, she spoke. So they used their voice to engage in protest and to chant slogans, and they didn't shut. Bettina Arndt is a very powerful social commentator in Australia. She has not been silenced. It's like Andrew Bolt, who said he'd been silenced by the Section 18C decision. Both of them are very powerful social commentators who have access to newspaper columns and public prominence that ordinary citizens do not have, and therefore ordinary citizens might need to use different types of speech to respond appropriately. They didn't shut her down. She was able to make her speech, and they were just attempting, I think, to insert themselves into a very unequal and uneven speech situation in a way that gave them some agency. That's how I would characterise it. And I do think that power imbalances are absolutely crucial to how we understand free speech, because it is not a level playing field. So one of the things that I've argued for a long time in my academic work is that free speech is not best achieved by staying away and letting the kids work it out in the playground. That's not how you best achieve free speech. In the United States, the popular belief is that you best achieve free speech by staying out of it and letting the kids work it out in the playground. I don't believe that works. So my view is that free speech is only real when it's practiced. And it's only able to be practiced, or it's only real when as many people as possible can practice it. And that requires, occasionally, doing the same thing we do in other areas of the law and providing, if you like, for want of a better term, affirmative action. It requires providing support and providing enabling conditions for some people to speak who otherwise don't have a voice, because otherwise they're never going to get to participate in the deliberation that is absolutely essential to them making decisions about how to live their own lives and how to live well and what they want to believe and what they want to value. So I don't think that students attempting to criticise Bettina Arndt amounts to shutting down her free speech at all. Sorry.
Last question over here.
Andrew Young, Kath.